The night Manhattan glittered like a river of diamonds. Maddie Shaw felt like she was drowning beneath it. La Verona, the upscale Italian restaurant where she worked, hummed with low jazz and the clinking of crystal glasses. Wealthy patrons filled every table, their Cartier watches glinting under soft golden lights. But Maddie wasn't looking at any of them. Her eyes were fixed on the man sitting alone in the corner booth, Adrian Hale, the infamous Mafia boss who'd vanished from the underworld years ago. Everyone whispered about him. No one approached him. But Maddie didn't have a choice. Her palms trembled as she balanced the tray of Amarone wine. She could feel sweat collecting beneath the stiff white collar of her uniform. She shouldn't have been working tonight. She shouldn't even be near Adrian. But Damien Rourke, her boss, her tormentor, the man who practically owned her life, had ordered her to serve the mobster personally. And when Damien gave an order, refusal wasn't an option. Not when her mother's medical debt depended on this job. Not when her younger brother was sitting in prison because Damien's brother, a corrupt judge, had put him there. As she approached Adrian's table, her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to escape. He looked up slowly, dark eyes sharp, assessing her in a single sweep. He had the presence of a man who'd seen too much and survived too much, the kind of man who didn't flinch at danger. But she did. And tonight, danger had come for both of them. Behind her, she could hear Damien's men shifting, pretending to be other customers. They weren't here for dinner. They were here to kill Adrian and make Maddie take the fall. Her throat tightened. Her vision blurred. This was it. She leaned in, pretending to set down a glass. Her lips barely moved, her voice a whisper so faint only Adrian could have heard it. Run when I drop the tray. For the first time, Adrian's expression changed. A flicker of confusion, then recognition, then something far more dangerous interest. But Maddie didn't give him time to react. She forced a smile, stepped back, and inhaled the coldest breath of her life. Her fingers loosened. The tray tilted. The wine glasses began to fall. And in the reflection of the glass, she saw Damien's gunman rising from his seat. The tray hit the floor, shattering the silence into 1,000 pieces, and everything exploded at once. "Run!" she gasped as chaos erupted around them. But she had no idea that this one whispered warning would change her life forever and ignite a war she couldn't escape. Before the tray shattered across the marble floor of La Verona, no one in Manhattan knew the name Maddie Shaw. To them, she was just another waitress weaving between white tablecloth booths, offering smiles she didn't feel and carrying burdens no one could see. But behind her tired eyes lived a history heavier than any tray she'd ever held. Maddie had once dreamed of becoming an attorney, a scholarship student at NYU Law. She was the kind of young woman professors predicted would change the system from the inside. She believed them. She believed in fairness, in justice, in doing the right thing, until life proved how easily the right thing could be crushed. Her mother's sudden illness, an aggressive, unforgiving condition, shattered everything. The medical bills rose faster than Maddie could keep up with. Insurance barely covered a fraction. Maddie dropped out of school 1 semester short of graduation, taking whatever job she could: hostess, cleaning staff, waitress. One of those jobs placed her directly in Damien Rourke's orbit, a place no one escaped unharmed. If that wasn't enough, tragedy struck again. Her younger brother, Noah, was accused of a crime he didn't commit. Damien's brother, the same corrupt judge who owed favors to half the city's criminals, sentenced him to 5 years without blinking. Maddie sat in the courtroom that day, her hands trembling in her lap, realizing she was powerless in a world she once thought she'd help rebuild. She worked double shifts to save money for a real lawyer, but no amount of tips could fight a system stacked against her. And Damien knew it. He dangled help like a twisted gift. In exchange, he demanded loyalty, silence, obedience. Maddie had become another one of his debts to collect. Tonight, the chains tightened. Tonight, the cost of survival rose again. As the restaurant buzzed with wealthy customers and soft jazz, Maddie felt the walls closing in. She could sense Damien watching her, waiting for her to crumble. Every step she took toward Adrian Hale, one of the most dangerous men alive, felt like she was walking across thin ice with fire beneath it. She didn't know if Adrian would listen. She didn't know if he'd run. She didn't even know if she'd survive the night. But she whispered anyway. Because sometimes the weakest moment becomes the one that changes everything, and Maddie was about to learn just how explosive that change could be. Manhattan looked breathtaking from the outside, skyscrapers glowing against the winter night, yellow cabs sliding through traffic like sparks across asphalt, the Fifth Avenue storefronts gleaming beneath strings of white holiday lights. But for Maddie Shaw, the city wasn't a dream. It was a cage with glass walls, letting her watch the world she could never reach. La Verona sat tucked between a high-end jewelry boutique and a boutique hotel popular among foreign diplomats. Through its tall arched windows, passers-by could see linen-draped tables, gold-trimmed menus, and the chandelier that dripped crystal like frozen tears. It was the kind of place where men in tailored suits sealed million-dollar deals, where women in silk dresses whispered secrets behind flutes of Prosecco. For the rich, it was a sanctuary. For Maddie, it was a battlefield. Every shift felt like a war she was losing. She moved between tables with a grace born of exhaustion, her worn shoes slipping slightly on polished floors that reflected her small, invisible, replaceable. The smells of truffle pasta and aged wine clung to the air, but she barely noticed anymore. Her world was survival, counting tips, hiding bruises of stress under makeup, calculating how many weeks of rent she could afford. Outside these walls, Queens waited for Hera, cramped apartment, with flickering heat, stacks of medical bills on the kitchen counter, and a framed photo of Noah smiling before the world turned cruel. That apartment was her real life, the one she fought for daily. But tonight was different. Tonight, La Verona felt hostile. The air was too still, the jazz too soft, the shadows too deep. Damien Rourke sat at his usual private table, pretending to enjoy tiramisu, while his eyes followed Maddie like a hunter tracking cornered prey. His men blended in with the customers, but she recognized them: broad shoulders, stiff posture, hands that never strayed far from their jackets. Across the dining room, Adrian Hale remained in the corner booth, a carved statue in a world of shimmering excess. He didn't belong here, but he owned the space the moment he sat down. His presence pulled gravity itself. People pretended not to stare. They failed. The city that birthed kings and crushed beggars seemed to hold its breath. Maddie could feel something tightening, a storm building in silence, waiting for the smallest spark. And that spark was going to come from her. She just didn't realize the moment she stepped toward Adrian, her life was about to split into before and after. Damien Rourke didn't just walk into a room. He shifted its temperature. Even inside La Verona's warm, candlelit glow, a chill followed him, settling over the tables like frost creeping across glass. His tailored charcoal suit blended perfectly with Manhattan's power elite, but his eyes, cold, flat, and calculating, set him apart. Those eyes had ruined lives without ever breaking a sweat. To most people, Damien was a respected businessman who funded charity galas and rubbed shoulders with city officials. But to those who really knew him, he was a puppeteer who pulled strings through fear, debt, and quiet threats, delivered with a smile that never reached his eyes. He didn't need to raise his voice. One whispered promise was enough to make grown men lose sleep. For Maddie Shaw, he wasn't just a boss. He was the storm that had swallowed her life. He owned La Verona. He owned her schedule. He owned the debt she couldn't outrun. And in a twisted way, he believed he owned her choices too. The first time she tried to quit, he reminded her how easily paperwork could get misplaced in her brother's case. The second time, he showed up at her apartment, leaning against her doorframe with the same casualness someone might use while waiting for a cab. "People who walk away from me," he had told her softly, "don't walk far." Tonight, he played his part flawlessly, fork in hand, posture relaxed, pretending to sample tiramisu while watching Maddie's every move. She felt it with each step, a weight between her shoulder blades, like a hand pressing her closer to danger. Damien didn't tolerate mistakes, and he certainly didn't tolerate betrayal. When Adrian Hale entered the restaurant, Damien saw an opportunity. They had history, a rivalry carved from blood and territory. Taking Adrian down tonight would send a message to the city, and forcing Maddie to play a role in it? That was Damien's twisted version of entertainment. His men were in place. His plan was flawless. His power was absolute. Or so he thought. From across the room, Damien watched Maddie lean down toward Adrian. He saw her lips move, just barely. Too subtle for the average eye. But Damien Rourke was not average, and he recognized disobedience the way wolves recognized prey. His jaw tightened. His fingers stilled on the dessert fork. In that exact moment, Damien realized Maddie wasn't following the script, and someone was going to pay for it. The sound came first, a sharp, ringing crack that sliced through the soft jazz and polite chatter, like lightning splitting a quiet sky. Crystal shattered across the marble floor, red wine blooming like spilled blood. Maddie had dropped the tray, but the real explosion came 1 second later. A table of wealthy patrons gasped, their diamond bracelets flashing as they recoiled. A server froze mid-step. Someone whispered, "Is she okay?" But Maddie didn't look at them. Her eyes locked on Adrian Hale, calm, still, but no longer uninterested. He had heard her warning. He had understood it. And now he was watching. Then chairs scraped violently behind her. Damien's first gunman stood up, hand plunging into his jacket. The second followed, eyes narrowed, steps quickening. They weren't subtle anymore. Their orders were clear. Maddie had served her purpose. Now she was disposable. Her breath hitched. Not yet. Not like this. Adrian rose slowly from the booth, every movement controlled, composed like a man who'd lived through ambushes before and had no intention of dying in a restaurant with linen napkins. His gaze flicked to Maddie. "Move," he murmured. She didn't have time to question him. He grabbed her wrist, pulling her toward the emergency exit near the bar, just as Damien shot to his feet, fury breaking through his polished facade. "Stop them!" Damien roared. Suddenly, the room wasn't La Verona anymore. It was a battlefield. Patrons ducked under tables. Glasses toppled. A waiter dropped an entire tray of bread baskets as he dove for cover. Someone screamed. Cell phones shot up to record. Because in Manhattan, even danger became content. Adrian pushed Maddie behind a pillar as the first gunman lunged. The mobster moved with terrifying precision, shoving Maddie aside while slamming the attacker's wrist against the wall. The gun clattered to the floor. A second man charged. Adrian twisted, sweeping his leg out, sending him crashing into a table of champagne flutes. Maddie trembled, her fingers gripping the pillar so tightly her knuckles blanched. She'd known violence existed. She just never expected to be at the center of it. Across the chaos, Damien's eyes blazed with betrayal. She had disobeyed him publicly. She had warned the enemy. She had become a problem he needed to erase. And with one subtle nod to his remaining men, Damien issued an order that would chase Maddie into the darkest corners of Manhattan. Maddie didn't remember how her legs carried her out the back door of La Verona. One moment, she was staring at the shattered wine glasses on the floor. The next, she was stumbling into the icy Manhattan alley, lungs burning as if she'd been underwater for too long. The cold slapped her across the face, but even that couldn't steady her trembling. Adrian had pushed her forward with a sharp whisper, "Run!" before staying behind to slow Damien's men. She didn't know if he was safe. She didn't know if she'd doomed him. All she knew was that her world had cracked open, spilling every fear she'd buried for years into the open night. She pressed her back against the brick wall, sliding down until her knees hit the pavement. Her breath came in shallow bursts. She felt sick, dizzy, useless, the kind of fear that freezes bones clawed through her. She'd crossed Damien, in public, where he couldn't hide his rage behind a smile. Her hands flew to her mouth. A sob escaped before she could stop it. Images flashed her mother's hospital bed, Noah in handcuffs, Damien's eyes burning with the promise of revenge. She had survived humiliation, exhaustion, hunger, and despair. But this felt impossible. Footsteps echoed from the alley entrance. Heavy, fast, too familiar. Maddie's heart lurched. Damien's men. She scrambled up, but her legs buckled under her. She caught herself on a dumpster, swallowing panic as shadows stretched toward her across the pavement. This couldn't be happening. She had no weapon, no plan, no strength left to fight. A tear slid down her cheek, warm against the winter air. "Please," she whispered to no one. Maybe to fate. Maybe to a god she wasn't sure she believed in anymore. "Not tonight. I can't lose anything else tonight." The footsteps drew closer. A silhouette appeared at the mouth of the alley. She froze. Her pulse went silent. Adrian or Damien's men, life or death. Her next breath depended on the answer. The figure stepped into the faint glow of a street lamp, coat flaring behind him. Maddie's fingers curled involuntarily against the metal rim of the dumpster, her entire body quivering, because the face emerging from the shadows was the last one she expected, and his next move would decide whether she lived to see morning. The figure stepped fully into the alley light, and Maddie's breath hitched painfully in her throat. It was Adrian Hale, not injured, not defeated, but composed, steady, breathing hard like he'd run through danger, yet refused to show fear. Snowflakes clung to the collar of his black coat. His eyes scanned her face first, then the alley behind her, assessing every threat in seconds. "You shouldn't be alone right now," he said, voice roughened from exertion. Maddie pressed a shaking hand to her chest. Relief washed over her so violently it nearly knocked her down. I thought they got you." "Not tonight." His jaw tightened. "Damien underestimated me. He always has." She didn't understand what he meant, but there was no time to ask. Adrian moved closer, shrugging out of his coat and draping it over her trembling shoulders. It was still warm. She didn't realize how cold she was until heat touched her skin. "You saved my life in there," he murmured. "No," she whispered back, voice cracking. "I just didn't want you to die because of me. That's exactly why I need you to listen carefully." He crouched slightly so they were eye level, his gaze deadly serious, almost gentle, something she never imagined on a man with his reputation. "Maddie, I know your family." Her blood ran cold. "What?" "Not you specifically," he corrected quickly. "Your father." A memory flashed her father in firefighter gear, soot on his cheeks, smiling as he lifted her into his arms. He died when she was 8, long before Noah's arrest, long before the medical bills, long before Damien. "My father," she breathed. "How?" Adrian looked away for the first time, as though the truth carried weight he wasn't sure she was ready to hold. "Years ago," he said quietly, "I was a different man. My life was darker. I made enemies faster than I made money. One night, things went bad. A warehouse fire. I was trapped. Your father pulled me out. He shouldn't have survived that rescue, but he did, long enough to hand me to paramedics." Maddie's throat tightened painfully. She had never known the details of his final rescue. Her mother rarely spoke of it. "I owed him my life," Adrian continued, "and I never repaid that debt." Her pulse pounded. "Why are you telling me this now?" Adrian stepped closer, voice lowering into a vow. "Because Damien Rourke is coming for you, Maddie, and I don't allow anyone to harm the family of the man who saved me." The alley fell silent right before a gun clicked somewhere in the darkness behind them. The gun clicked behind them, sharp metallic warning that sliced through the icy night. Adrian reacted instantly, pulling Maddie down behind a stack of old wooden crates, just as a bullet shattered the brick wall where her head had been a second earlier. Dust rained over them, the cold ground biting through her knees. She gasped, heart slamming against her ribs like a trapped bird. Adrian didn't flinch. "Stay low," he ordered, voice steady, too steady for a man under fire. Another shot cracked through the alley. A dumpster dented inward with a violent clang. Maddie squeezed her eyes shut, but something inside her shifted. Furies, but also something stronger. A spark. A refusal. She had spent years being cornered, silenced, controlled. Damien had dictated every part of her life, where she worked, how she survived, who she could hope to protect. But tonight, she had made her first choice. She warned Adrian. She disrupted Damien's plan. She wasn't powerless anymore. Adrian glanced at her, as if sensing the change. "Can you run?" Maddie swallowed hard. "Tell me where." He nodded. "Good. Because tonight, you're not prey." His words lit something fierce inside her. Together they moved, Adrian shielding her as they ducked behind a fire escape ladder. Snowflakes drifted through the alley, illuminated by the harsh glow of streetlights. Maddie's breath fogged the air, but her mind sharpened with a clarity she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't just running from danger. She was running toward something, toward truth, toward control, toward a version of herself she thought she'd lost. Another gunman turned into the alley. Adrian knocked him down with brutal efficiency, disarming him before he could even scream. The gun skidded across the pavement, stopping at Maddie's feet. She stared at it. Her hands trembled, then stilled. For the first time, she didn't see herself as fragile. She saw a woman who had survived everything life threw at her. She bent down, picked up the weapon, and held it not with confidence, but with resolve. Adrian's eyes widened slightly. Not in fear, in respect. "You're stronger than you think," he said. Maddie exhaled shakily. "I'm done being afraid." But before Adrian could respond, a black SUV screeched into the alley, headlights blinding them both. The rear door swung open, revealing a familiar face Maddie never expected to see again. The black SUV idled in the alley, its engine rumbling like a trapped animal. Maddie's pulse hammered through her veins as the rear door swung open. For a moment, the world froze, the snow, the headlights, even her breath suspended in the cold air. Then a figure stepped out. Gray coat, scarred cheek, eyes like burned steel. Detective Rowan Briggs. The same officer who arrested her brother Noah. The same man who testified that Noah fit the profile. Her stomach twisted. "Why are you here?" Rowan didn't answer immediately. His gaze flicked from Maddie to the gun in her hand, then to Adrian, who tensed like he was ready to strike. Rowan lifted both palms slowly. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "I am here because I finally have proof. Damien framed your brother." The alley spun around her. Maddie grabbed the crate beside her to steady herself. "Noah, you can prove his innocence?" Rowan nodded. "Damien used your brother as a scapegoat to cover up one of his own operations. I didn't know then, but I know now. And I know he's trying to silence you the same way." Anger, sharp and electric, surged through Maddie's chest. All these years, her mother's sleepless nights, Noah's stolen freedom, her shattered dreams, Damien had orchestrated all of it. Adrian took one step forward, voice low and lethal. "If you're lying, this ends badly for you." Rowan didn't flinch. "I'm not lying, and I can get both of you out of here, but you have to move now." Damien called in his contract men. "They're minutes away." Maddie hesitated. Trusting Rowan felt like stepping into fire, but staying meant dying on cold asphalt. She exchanged a look with Adrian, silent, urgent, a moment of wordless understanding. He gave a nod. They moved toward the SUV, but the second Rowan opened the passenger door, a bullet sliced through the air, grazing the metal frame before ricocheting into the wall behind them. Maddie ducked instinctively. Damien stepped into the other end of the alley, illuminated by headlights like a villain stepping onto a stage, his smile stretched thin and poisonous. "So this is who you run to, Maddie," he called out. "A disgraced cop and a washed-up gangster?" His men fanned out behind him, guns raised. Adrian pushed Maddie behind him, his muscles coiled like a drawn bow, and Damien lifted his gun, aiming directly at her heart. Damien's gun locked on Maddie's heart, and for the first time in her life, she didn't freeze. Something inside her, the same fire that pushed her to warn Adrian, the same fire that carried her through grief, debt, and fear, snapped into place. She stepped out from behind Adrian. "Maddie!" Adrian grabbed for her, but she shook her head. "No more running." Her voice cut through the alley like a blade. Damien blinked, thrown for a moment by the sudden shift in the girl he had controlled for years. She wasn't trembling anymore. She wasn't begging. She wasn't his puppet. She was standing. "Look at you," Damien sneered, "trying to be brave right before you die." But Maddie didn't flinch. "You framed my brother. You tormented my mother. You used the law like a weapon. And tonight, you tried to murder a man in front of an entire restaurant." Damien's smile faltered. Rowan Briggs stepped forward. "She's right. I recorded your men the moment they entered La Verona. Your conspiracy charge alone, life in prison." Damien laughed coldly. "You think anyone will take the word of a disgraced cop?" Rowan held up a small device. "Maybe not my word, but the district attorney will take digital evidence with facial recognition and timestamps." For the first time, Damien's mask cracked. Adrian moved subtly, positioning himself between Maddie and the line of fire. "You're done, Damien." "No," Damien hissed. "Not yet." He raised the gun. Everything happened at once. A sharp crack echoed. Rowan fired first, hitting Damien's shoulder. The mobster stumbled back, gun dropping from his hand, as his men panicked. Adrian stormed forward, pinning Damien to the wall with the force of years' worth of unspoken revenge. Maddie watched not with fear, but with a quiet, trembling relief as Damien's empire collapsed in a single blinding moment. Sirens wailed in the distance, his men scattered. Rowan cuffed the mobster, reading his rights as Damien screamed threats that no longer mattered. The knight that once tried to break her now bowed at her feet. Adrian turned to her, eyes softening in a way she had never seen. "You didn't just save my life," he said quietly. "You saved your own?" Maddie exhaled, a shaky smile breaking through. For the first time, the future didn't look like a hallway of locked doors. She didn't know yet that this was only the beginning of freedom, of justice, and of something dangerously close to love. The morning after Damien Rourke's arrest didn't feel like victory. It felt like the quiet after a storm. Too still, too fragile, as if the wrong breath could shatter everything Maddie had fought for. She sat at Adrian's penthouse dining table, wrapped in a soft gray blanket he insisted she take. The skyline stretched before her, Manhattan glowing under a pale winter sunrise. For the first time in years, she wasn't rushing to a shift, dodging Damien's threats, or calculating medical bills. She didn't know what to do with the silence. Adrian stepped into the room, 2 steaming mugs in hand. "Coffee," he said. "Strong. You look like you need it." She managed a small smile. "That obvious? Only to someone who's been hunted before." He sat across from her, studying her with an intensity that should have unsettled her, but didn't. She felt safe. The word startled her. She hadn't felt safe since her father died. "Rowan called early this morning," Adrian said. "Your brother will be released pending a full review. It's not final, but it's the first real step." Maddie's breath caught. Tears filled her eyes instantly. "Noah! He's coming home?" "Soon," Adrian nodded. Damien's files held everything Rowan needed. She pressed her hands to her mouth, letting the tears fall. Years of helplessness cracked open. Adrian didn't move, didn't speak. He simply let her feel it, and somehow, that meant more than any comfort he could have offered. When she finally wiped her cheeks, Adrian leaned forward. "What do you want now?" The question threw her. She had spent so long reacting to life surviving, scrambling, that she hadn't imagined she could choose anything. "I want my life back," she whispered. "I want Noah free. I want my mom's treatments covered. I want peace." Adrian nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already suspected. "Then I'll help you rebuild, whatever you need." She shook her head. "You've already done enough." "Not even close." Something unspoken passed between them, warm, fragile, dangerous. Maddie looked away, pulse quickening. A sudden buzz cut through the moment. Adrian's phone lit up on the table. He glanced at the screen, and his expression changed, darkening with a tension Maddie recognized too well. "What is it?" she asked. Adrian stood, jaw tightening. Damien wasn't the only one pulling strings. Before Maddie could ask more, Adrian grabbed his coat because a new enemy had just entered the game. Adrian didn't speak again until they reached the private elevator in his penthouse. His posture was rigid, shoulders tight beneath his dark coat. Maddie followed, heart thudding, sensing danger, but not its shape. When the elevator doors slid shut, he finally exhaled. Damien wasn't acting alone, Adrian said. Someone bigger funded him, someone who benefits from chaos. Maddie frowned. Who? Adrian didn't answer immediately. He pulled up the message on his phone and handed it to her. A single line blinked across the screen. He knows she's alive. Move fast. Maddie's breath stilled. Who's he? Adrian looked at her with an expression she'd never seen on him before, fear, controlled but unmistakable. A man named Marcus Vale. She shook her head. I've never heard of him. You wouldn't. He keeps his name buried. But he runs a syndicate twice the size of Damien's. Damien was his puppet. Adrian paused. And Marcus has a reason to come after you. For what? Her voice cracked slightly. I didn't do anything to him. No, Adrian said softly. But your father did. Maddie felt the floor drop away. My father? Adrian nodded. Your dad's last rescue, the warehouse fire, wasn't random. Marcus Vale ordered that building torched for insurance fraud. Your father pulled me out before the flames reached the explosives hidden inside. Marcus believed I died. Maddie stared, stunned. And now? And now he knows I'm alive because of last night. The elevator doors opened into Adrian's underground garage. Rows of vehicles sat beneath harsh fluorescent lights, but the quiet space felt suffocating. Maddie wrapped her arms around herself. But why come after me? She whispered. Because he thinks you're leverage, Adrian said. A way to pull me out of hiding. A way to control me. A cold realization washed over Maddie. So saving you put me in his line of fire. No. Adrian stepped closer, his voice firm. Marcus Vale put you there, and I won't let him touch you. Maddie met his gaze, and for the first time, she sensed the depth of the storm behind Adrian's calm exterior. This wasn't just business. This was personal, deadly personal. A soft beep echoed through the garage. Adrian's head snapped up. Someone had accessed the security gate. He grabbed Maddie's hand. Get behind me. Now. The metal doors began sliding open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the light one who should have still been behind bars. The metal security doors slid open with a low, grinding groan. Adrian positioned himself in front of Maddie, every muscle coiled, ready to strike. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting harsh shadows across the polished concrete floor. Then the figure stepped into view. Maddie gasped. Noah? Her younger brother, pale, thin, eyes hollow from months in prison, stood framed in the doorway. He wore no orange jumpsuit now, just an old gray hoodie and jeans, clothes that didn't belong to him. His wrists still bore faint red marks where cuffs had rubbed skin raw. Noah, Maddie whispered again, stepping forward before Adrian could stop her. How did you get out? Noah swallowed, voice hoarse. Rowan Briggs. He pulled strings after he found the files. Got me out before Damien's people could move me. His gaze flicked anxiously toward the elevator. But Maddie, they were coming. Vale's men. They wanted to relocate me to some off-the-map facility. Rowan said Adrian was the only one who could keep us safe. Adrian's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Rowan made the right call. Maddie rushed to Noah, wrapping her arms around him. For a brief second, the world shrank to siblings reunited raw, fragile, real. Noah held her tightly, whispering, I thought I'd never see you again. But the moment cracked as quickly as it formed. Noah pulled back, eyes wide with urgency. Maddie, he's coming! Adrian stepped closer. Marcus Vale? Noah nodded. He wants both of you, and he has people inside Rourke's organization who didn't go down last night. "What does he want with me?" Maddie asked, voice trembling. Noah hesitated, then said the words that made Adrian stiffen. "He said you're his insurance. That if Adrian won't come willingly, he'll take you instead." The air thickened, as if the entire garage held its breath. Adrian's eyes darkened with a vow older than violence. "Over my dead body." Noah shook his head quickly. "It won't be that simple. Vale's not like Damien. Damien played with fear. Vale plays with inevitability." Maddie felt her stomach knot. "What does that mean?" Before Noah could answer, every overhead light in the garage snapped off a deafening blackout. Then a single voice echoed through the darkness, smooth and chilling. "Madeline Shaw, we finally meet." And the sound of slow clapping approached them from the shadows. The garage lights remained dead, swallowing the space in a suffocating black. Maddie felt Noah clutch her sleeve while Adrian shifted forward, placing himself between them and the approaching voice. The sound of slow, measured clapping echoed off the concrete walls, each tap a cold reminder that whoever owned this moment was in complete control. Then a soft hum filled the room, emergency lights warming to life. Dim red strips glowed along the floor, outlining the silhouette of a tall man in a tailored midnight blue coat. His presence chilled the air, though he wore a smile that belonged on someone shaking hands at a charity gala, not walking out of the shadows like death itself. Marcus Vale. He looked nothing like the monster Maddie imagined. Clean-shaven, polished, elegant, the kind of man who could sit beside a senator and blend perfectly into the frame. But his eyes, flat, pale, indifferent, were wrong. They didn't see people. They saw assets. "Madeline Shaw," he said, each syllable smooth as silk. "The woman who ruined a very lucrative miscalculation." Adrian stepped forward, voice low and lethal. "You shouldn't be here, Vale." Marcus chuckled softly. "Adrian, you of all people should know I go wherever I please." His gaze drifted to Maddie, assessing her with clinical curiosity. "Your father was a remarkable man, brave to the point of foolishness. He saved you once by saving him." He nodded toward Adrian. "How poetic that his daughter is now my key to correcting an old mistake." Maddie's skin turned cold. "I'm not your key to anything." "Oh, but you are," Marcus replied. "Killing you would be crude. Taking you would be efficient." Noah stepped in front of her. "You're not taking my sister." Marcus looked amused. "You must be Noah. Your file was quite interesting. You were never the threat I was worried about." He lifted a gloved hand. A sudden metallic click echoed behind them. Adrian spun instantly. Two of Marcus's men had slipped in through the secondary entrance, guns trained on Maddie and Noah. "Vale," Adrian warned, "touch them, and I burn your entire world to the ground." Marcus smiled pleasantly, as if negotiating a business deal. "Then I suppose we're at an impasse." He tilted his head, voice softening into something far more dangerous. "Unless, of course, Maddie comes with me willingly." Maddie froze because Adrian's silence told her this choice might be the only thing keeping them alive. For a heartbeat, the entire garage felt suspended. Adrian, Noah, Marcus, the armed men frozen inside a moment sharp enough to cut skin. Maddie felt every pulse in her body, every breath burning in her lungs. She understood the truth instantly. Marcus didn't need to kill her. He needed to own her. And if she refused, someone else would pay the price. Her gaze flicked to Noah, her little brother, already broken by a world that punished innocence. Then to Adrian, his jaw tight, eyes blazing with a fury that could set cities on fire. She could feel the weight of his silence. He wasn't telling her to surrender, but he wasn't telling her to stay either. He didn't want her to die because of him. Maddie stepped forward slowly. Marcus smiled. "Wise girl." Adrian moved instantly. "Maddie, don't." She turned to him, voice trembling but steady. "If I don't go, they'll hurt Noah. Or you. I can't let that happen." "You think he'll let them live anyway?" Adrian shot back. "Vale doesn't make deals, he buries them." Marcus tisked softly. "Adrian, you underestimate my appreciation for cooperation." Noah grabbed Maddie's sleeve. "Don't do this! Maddie, don't you dare!" But she gently pulled free. Noah, I promised I'd protect you. I'm not breaking that promise. Marcus extended a hand toward her, gloved fingers relaxed, patient. Too patient. Maddie took a step. Adrian's voice dropped to a raw growl. If you touch her, I'll end you. Marcus didn't look away from Maddie. You had your chance, Adrian. Now it's mine. She took another step closer to Marcus, further from safety, heart hammering against her ribs. Every part of her wanted to run back to Adrian, to hide behind the man who had become her only refuge in a collapsing world. But she couldn't let her family, or the man she was beginning to trust, die for her. Her voice cracked as she whispered, I'm coming! Marcus's eyes glinted with triumph. But then, a sudden metallic clang echoed behind them. One of the overhead vents crashed open, scattering dust and metal onto the concrete floor. Marcus spun, alarm flashing in his eyes. Maddie did too, just in time to see a figure drop from the vent, landing in a crouch. A figure she never expected. And the voice that followed wasn't Marcus's, Adrian's, or Noah's. It belonged to someone Maddie thought had vanished from her life forever. The figure landed in a crouch, knees bent, palms touching the concrete for balance. For a second, everyone froze. Adrian, Noah, Marcus, even the two gunmen. Then the newcomer rose slowly, dusting off a black jacket that looked far too thin for the winter chill. Maddie's jaw dropped. Rowan, she whispered. Detective Rowan Briggs, disgraced, suspended, supposedly hiding from internal affairs, stood in front of her like he hadn't just crashed through an industrial ventilation shaft. His lip was split, his hair a mess, but his eyes burned with the same defiant stubbornness that once terrified rookie officers. Rowan pointed a small device toward Marcus's armed men. Motion-triggered EMP. Your guns won't fire for the next 2 minutes. The men tried anyway. Click, click, nothing. Marcus's smile finally cracked. Detective Briggs, your career really is determined to die spectacularly. Rowan stepped forward, ignoring him entirely as he looked at Maddie. I wasn't going to let you walk into hell alone. Not again. Maddie shook her head, stunned. How did you even— Followed Vale's men, Rowan said simply. I assumed someone needed saving, and I was right. Marcus's expression cooled into something deadly. Briggs, you're interfering in a matter far above your pay grade. No, Rowan replied. I'm interfering in a kidnapping. Adrian gave a low, humorless laugh. He's right, Vale. This just stopped being a negotiation. Marcus shifted his weight, calculating every exit, every angle. You think this changes anything? Maddie will come with me, whether it's today, tomorrow, or after you're all buried. Rowan lifted the EMP device higher. You're forgetting something. Oh? Marcus snapped. Rowan pointed behind him. Your backup isn't coming. A sudden series of muffled thuds echoed through the ventilation shafts, 3 bodies hitting metal, then falling silent. Marcus stiffened. His remaining men glanced at each other, uncertain. Adrian stepped closer to Maddie, lowering his voice. Stay behind me. When this breaks, it breaks fast. Maddie nodded, pulse rising. Not in fear this time, in adrenaline, resolve, something fierce enough to burn through the cold. Marcus lifted his chin. You can't protect her forever. She is the leverage that binds you to me. Adrian narrowed his eyes. Wrong. He reached subtly behind him, pulling something from his coat pocket. Maddie, he said, your father didn't just save my life. He opened his hand, and what she saw inside upended everything she thought she knew. Adrian's hand opened slowly, revealing a small charred metal tag, nothing more than a warped piece of brass on a broken chain. But Maddie recognized it instantly. Her breath caught. It was her father's firefighter ID tag. Her knees nearly buckled. Where? How do you have that? Adrian's voice softened in a way she had never heard before. Your father didn't just save my life that night, Maddie. Before he passed out from smoke inhalation, he pressed this into my hand. He told me— Adrian swallowed hard, emotion threading through his voice— that if anything ever happened to him, I should protect his family as if it were my own. The words hit her like a wave, warm, painful, overwhelming. "My dad said that?" she whispered. Adrian nodded. He knew he might not make it out. His last conscious act was making me promise to watch over you. Noah stared in disbelief. Dad trusted you that much? Adrian's jaw tightened with guilt. And I failed him. I hid from the world. I didn't look for you. I told myself there was no way to find the family of a man I barely knew. But when I saw your last name on the police report, I knew. Maddie pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. All her life she'd carried guilt for not being able to save anything. Her mother's health, Noah's freedom, their home, her father's memory. She never imagined her father had left them a protector, one who carried the weight of that promise for years. Marcos's voice cut sharply through the moment. How touching, he drawled. Family legacies, broken promises, foolish sentiment. He stepped closer, red floor lights reflecting in his pale eyes. But none of that changes reality. Maddie Shaw is mine. She is leverage, and leverage doesn't get to choose its destiny. Adrian's expression darkened, the softness gone. He stepped in front of Maddie, shielding her completely. You don't get to speak her name. Rowan moved beside Noah, lifting a second EMP device. Your men will stay down. You're outnumbered, Vale. Marcus smirked. Outnumbered? No. Outplayed? Never. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the garage, metal bending, glass shattering. A second team of Vale's men stormed through a side entrance, armed with weapons unaffected by Rowan's EMP. Noah shouted, They're flanking us! Adrian pulled Maddie close. Stay with me. Because this wasn't a negotiation anymore. It was a war, and they were officially surrounded. The garage erupted into chaos as Marcus Vale's second wave of men stormed in boots, pounding against concrete, flashlights slicing through the dim red glow. Their weapons gleamed in the shadows, immune to Rowan's EMP. Maddie's pulse spiked, heat rushing to her face despite the winter cold. Adrian reacted first. He shoved Maddie toward a reinforced pillar. Stay behind me, no matter what. Rowan grabbed Noah, pulling him into cover behind a black Mercedes. This is going to get loud, he muttered. Marcus, still standing tall amid the frenzy, watched everything with unsettling calm, as if the violence unfolding were merely a business transaction. You see, Adrian? Inevitability. You were never prepared for a man who plans 3 steps beyond your best move. Adrian snarled. Funny, I was about to say the same thing. A Vale enforcer charged. Adrian met him halfway, crashing a fist into the man's jaw, then elbowing him into a support beam with bone-cracking force. Another attacker lunged from behind, but Maddie shouted, Adrian, right! He pivoted just in time, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting until the gun clattered across the floor. Noah, terrified but determined, hurled the fallen weapon toward Rowan. Use it! Rowan caught it midair, firing at the fluorescent lights. They shattered, plunging half the garage into deeper shadow. Better for us than them, he said. Maddie's breath hitched. The darkness, the echoes, the blur of motion. She felt like she was sinking into a nightmare she couldn't wake from. But then Adrian's hand brushed her arm brief, grounding, steady. We're getting out, he said. I promise you that. Before she could answer, a sharp whistle cut through the tension. Marcus. He raised his hand, signaling his men to pause. They obeyed immediately. Adrian froze. Rowan lifted the gun. Noah held his breath. Marcus took a slow step forward, addressing Maddie directly. You want this to end? He said softly. It can. Come with me now, and no one else gets hurt. Maddie stared at him, at the man who destroyed her brother's life, hunted her through the night, treated her as nothing more than a bargaining chip. And then she straightened her spine. No, she said. Marcus' smile faded. Then watch them fall, he replied, nodding once to his men. They aimed their guns, and suddenly, the entire building shook as something massive slammed into the garage wall from the outside. The explosion wasn't fire, thank God, but the deafening crash of reinforced steel giving way. A black armored tactical vehicle smashed through the garage wall, concrete spraying like shrapnel. The shockwave knocked Maddie to her knees, Noah shielding her as dust clouded the air. Adrian dragged them both behind a pillar. "Stay down!" Rowan cursed under his breath. "That's not Vale's!" That's the vehicle's lights flared, blindingly white. Its side doors swung open, and a swarm of armored agents poured out federal insignias glowing on their vests. FBI, Special Response Unit. Marcus Vale's face finally changed. He looked startled. The lead agent shouted, "Vale! Drop your weapons and stand down!" For the first time, Marcus's men hesitated. Not from fear of the FBI, but from confusion. How had they been found? How had a federal unit mobilized this fast? Rowan lifted his badge, dusty, bent, but still shining. "I called them the second I confirmed Vale was coming for Maddie." Marcus's expression curdled. "You insolent!" But Rowan wasn't finished. "And the feds were very interested in a digital file containing all your offshore accounts, your shell companies, and the payroll of every corrupt official you've ever owned." Adrian's eyes widened. "Rowan! You got it?" Rowan nodded. "Your tip about Damien's server's spot on. Vale's entire empire was backed up in mirrored files he thought no one could access." Marcus's men lifted their guns, but the FBI already had lasers trained on their foreheads. "Drop them!" an agent barked. This time, the click of guns hitting concrete echoed like falling dominoes. But Marcus didn't bend. He stepped back, shaking with controlled fury. "Do you think the law can touch me? I'm the man behind your law." Rowan gave a humorless smile. "Not anymore. You're done." Adrian grabbed Maddie's hand, pulling her to her feet as agents closed in. Marcus's gaze snapped to Maddie's cold, venomous final. "You think you've won. But understand this. Madeline Shaw, your father stole my victory once. And now you've stolen my empire. That kind of debt is never forgiven." FBI agents swarmed him, locking metal cuffs around his wrists. He didn't fight. He didn't scream. He only stared at Maddie with a promise of vengeance centuries old. Maddie's chest tightened, but she didn't look away. She stepped forward. "Marcus," she said quietly, "the difference between you and my father is simple. He saved lives. You destroy them." Marcus's jaw clenched. Agents shoved him toward the tactical van. But as he passed Adrian, Marcus whispered something that drained the color from Adrian's face. Maddie watched as the FBI van doors slammed on Marcus Vale, a monster dragged into the light after hiding in shadows for decades. The cold night air felt different now. Not dangerous, not suffocating, lighter as if the city itself had exhaled. But her focus snapped to Adrian. He stood frozen, Marcus's final whispered words echoing in his mind. Maddie stepped closer, touching his arm gently. "What did he say to you?" Adrian looked at her, the hardness in his eyes melting into something vulnerable. "He said I'd lose you, that men like me never get to keep anything good." Maddie's heart tightened. "Adrian." He shook his head. "He's wrong, but I needed to hear it from you. After everything tonight, you deserve a normal life, peace, safety, and I'm stop." She stepped fully into his space, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You think after everything we survived, I'd walk away now?" Adrian swallowed hard. "I can't promise you a quiet life." "I don't want quiet," Maddie whispered. "I want honest. I want someone who fights for me. And Adrian, you already do." His breath caught just slightly, but enough for her to feel it. Behind them, Noah approached, wiping tears from his eyes. "Sis-im free." "For real, they cleared my record." He laughed shakily. "We're actually getting our lives back." Rowan joined them, bruised but grinning. "Not to brag, but I did help bring down the biggest kingpin on the East Coast." Maddie hugged him. "Thank you for believing us." For once, Rowan smirked. "I backed the right side." Siren lights faded as agents left the scene. The night grew quiet again, the chaos replaced by something almost gentle, like the first breath after surfacing from deep water. Adrian turned to Maddie once more. Snow dusted his hair, catching in the warm glow of the garage lights. "Your father saved my life," he said softly, "but tonight you saved my soul." Her eyes stung with tears. "So what now?" Adrian lifted her hand, slow, deliberate, and pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "Now," he said, "we build something of our own, not out of fear, out of choice." Maddie felt warmth spread through her chest, hopeful, steady, new. The kind of hope she hadn't felt since childhood. She smiled. "Then I choose you?" Adrian exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for years. And somewhere above the crumbling garage, Manhattan's skyline shimmered, as if celebrating the woman who refused to break and finally won everything she once thought she'd lost. And just like that, our story comes to an end. But hey, my wonderful friends, you're still here, aren't you? If you made it all the way to this moment, then something in this journey must have touched your heart. Maybe it reminded you of your own battles, or maybe it whispered something you needed to hear today. Here's the truth our story wants to leave with you. Strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's the quiet decision to stand back up. Sometimes it's choosing peace when the world pushes chaos. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And that's exactly what Maddie discovered. She couldn't control the storms around her, but she could choose who she became within them. Life will test you. People may underestimate you. Darkness may circle you. But healing begins the moment you say, "This will not break me." And friend, if Maddie can rise after everything she faced, so can you. If this story touched you, even a little, let us know. Like, share, and subscribe so more hearts can find a little strength and hope, just like you did tonight. We're here with you, always.